Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Something to Complain About. I am T, and I am here with A. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, T?
Doing okay. You
Can
know,
you believe this is like our 10th episode?
a whole handful now.
That's right. Two handfuls.
Yeah, two handfuls. Okay, so we're set, right?
Yeah, I think
We're ready
so.
for, we're ready for like syndication or something.
Maybe. Let's hope.
Oh my. Yeah, oh my. So along with our 10 episode milestone, which completely split my mind, we should have done something extra special
Ooh,
for this one. Um, Other than like, yay, we have stuck it out this far.
right.
But I was also thinking about just kind of the general season of back to school. I work in higher ed. I've been working on just all the news and update with college lately. And it led me to think about a conversation I had with some work studies about 6 or 7 years ago who were complaining, and you're going to love this. They were complaining about how difficult it was for them to register for class.
Okay. I
Okay.
would like to know
So,
what it actually is like to register for classes now because I remember what it was like when we registered for classes.
well, I have registered for classes fairly recently. It is an absolute fantasy
Oh,
compared to what it used to be. So, as these work studies were complaining about how trying and complex it was for them to log into the computer and pick out a class and put it in the shopping cart and check it out, just like you do at Amazon or any other web retailer,
wait a
I
minute.
said,
That's how you register for classes?
yeah,
Wait, I mean, what happened to the catalog that you had to go get that
what?
was like 100 pages long and you had to like flip through the pages and be like, oh, I want to take organic chemistry. Those are my slots. Those are that's the room of the professors. That's not how it
No,
works. I mean, I'm
no,
sure it
no,
doesn't, but like, that's how it worked when we did it.
no. It's like, um, it's very magical. And they were complaining that it takes them like 15 minutes to do it. And so I laughed in old school and I said, let's take a little break. Let me tell you guys a story of how we used to do things in the before time.
Pull up a
And
chair. Let's have it, right? I mean, we're old enough now where we can tell these stories, which is honestly depressing in itself. Let's just be real about that. And
well,
I'm not having enough coffee yet today to put up with it. But I mean, really?
yeah.
Like
Oh no, and
15
it,
minutes?
and it blew their mind. And then there was someone, a worker there who was a little younger than we are, who said, "Oh yeah, I remember way back when we had to do it by phone." And I laughed again. And I said, "Now I'm going to tell you about the time when even registering by phone was not an option." And
I
so,
kind of, I feel like we at the very end of undergrad, I feel like they were
yeah,
trying out an option for us to register by phone, but I don't remember it working well for me, and I had to go back through the normal paper
right.
at the registrar's office kind of thing.
Yeah, I do remember registering by phone what specifically. And I must remember it because it must have been like the first time. But
Yeah,
yeah, I would have been probably a senior. The first semester I was a senior because I was a 3 semester senior.
yeah.
Um, so I do remember that, but I don't remember doing it more than probably 2 or 3 times. And I think at that time, the only reason why we got to do it by phone, I think we had to meet like a lot of different criteria even to to do it. And one was like, you had to be an upperclassman and this and that. So I had children in tears by the time I was done telling them how I used to have to register for classes at the same institution. And it blew their little mind. It just,
I imagine it did.
yeah, yeah. I was like, oh no, we had assigned time and you had to show up and stand in line.
Yes. And your assigned
And
time sometimes would be in the middle of your freaking class.
yep,
It didn't
within
matter.
the
It wasn't like they had the foresight or ability. Maybe they didn't have the ability. I don't really believe they didn't have the ability because I think they had more technological ability than we give them credit for sometimes.
I
But
don't
they
know, having
didn't.
worked, well, hold on. I will say, having worked later at that institution, that in the wide world, the ability was there, but I doubt it was actually being utilized.
That would probably that would make the most sense, honestly, now that you say it. But I mean, we would just get a time that was, I believe, assigned. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you might remember this better than I would, but I believe it was assigned based on your credit standing and class standing. So
Yep,
the seniors with the largest number of credits or the highest number of credits would be first. Freshmen with no credits or a few credits would be last, and everybody would just kind of filter. It was in that order. And so
yep.
obviously the first time I registered for class, and you probably had the same experience, would have been in the summer of 95, right? When we started.
Uh,
And I can't even say it anymore without wanting to cry.
summer,
Um,
summer of
the
95.
summer of
Yep,
95, we came for freshman preview. That's when I did it. I sat down with the person who was supposed to be my advisor, faculty advisor, or whatever. He was a chemistry professor. I remember that. And he was like, you should take this and this and this and this. And I was like, well, I already picked those. So that's helpful. Um, and that was it. I think that was one of the few times I saw him. And then he gave me to somebody else um, as my advisor. But he took the sheet and then that was it. So I had this false sense of what registration was like because I just handed it to the people, right? After I
mhm,
had my meeting with him, we handed it to somebody in the office and they registered us for us. And then when we got to campus and it was time to start looking at registering for the next semester, that's when I learned out the absolute bluster that was about to drop
yeah,
into my lap. And I was like,
that,
what on earth is going on
well,
here?
and here's the thing, because as after I blew everybody's minds and this conversation, and the students were like, the work studies were like, well, how did you not go nuts? And yeah, and they're like, well, that would drive me crazy. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what we had at the time. Like there were no, there were no other options.
Yeah.
Um,
No, we have to
but
remind them we did not have cell phones. Okay.
I
We
took a
had
second half
Lexus, Nexus,
century.
Unix systems, whatever you want to call it. I don't remember what they're called, right? For email, where you were, you'd go into your little system and no, we have, did not have like internet quite in the way that we think of it today. We did not
And
have handheld computers. We didn't even have flip phones. Like the phones that were available when we started college came with a cigarette lighter plug-in and in a big case, and they literally were only utilized in emergencies if you were lucky, but they look like a big old phone.
and and we couldn't afford them.
No,
So,
I didn't know anybody that
but
had one.
but yeah, again, that's just terrible. It's like, well, yeah, it was, but I mean, that's what you had to do. And I remember getting the course catalog,
Yeah,
and I can't remember, did they mail them to us or they were like lying around campus? But I
they
remember
were
going,
they were everywhere around campus. They may have mailed them. We had slightly different experiences initially because I think you lived off campus the whole time,
mm-mm,
right? Or did you live in a
uh-uh.
dorm?
I lived in a dorm the
Oh,
first 2 years. Yeah,
yeah.
I served my
So
time.
just to reset the reality for everybody, we met at the beginning of like our junior or third year, roughly. So I did not know T prior to that point in time. So I didn't know she lived in a dorm. Did you live in um, the little one close to the circle with the screw?
No, I lived in the little one that started with the G.
Oh, that's where I live too.
So so you were so memorable that we lived in the same small, dinky little dorm, and I passed you probably like 800 times, and you passed me like 800 times, and neither one of us paid each other any mind.
What floor did you live on?
3, then 5.
I lived on two. I was 212.
You weren't one of the ones that would go in the elevator and pee in the corner, were you?
No,
Okay.
but I did live on the floor, and this is just an awful story to tell. And the people who are listening are just going to be like, "Oh my god." I lived on second floor, and it was so bad on our floor. Um, that the way that our bathroom was treated, this has nothing to do with registering class, clearly, but the way that the guys on our floor. So, just for kind of some background setting, where we went to school, the dorm that T and I lived in, and this is weird because in all the years, I don't know if we've ever talked about the dorm that we've lived in, and we've known each other now for 28 years, but we lived in the same dorm apparently, just a floor apart. But it was co-ed by floor. So 2 and 4 were men, and 3 and 5 were women, and it was only 5 floors, right? It was 2, 3, and 4, 5.
Right.
Um, so our floor had all the guys, and on the weekends, they would get so drunk, there'd be so much partying, that they would destroy the bathroom. Like, the vomit, some people would have diarrhea, whatever. And at some point in the middle of our first or second semester, I don't remember when it was, the the cleaning staff just flat out refused to even come on our floor anymore.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to your actual question, catalogs were everywhere. They I don't think they mailed them. So when you were asking about mailing, and I was thinking you lived off campus, they may have mailed them to you off campus. They did not show up, as I recall, in our mailboxes. They did show up at the front desk. Our RAs would actually have like at least my RA time would have a meeting with us every month, and he told us what, when it was time. He's like, the catalogs are coming out next week. Make sure you get them. If you have any questions
So
about how to register,
so
let me know.
your RA would talk to you guys about that, but not about not peeing in the elevator or the stairwell or
Oh no,
destroying the bathroom
we
on the
had a
floor.
bunch of mandatory meetings where they berated the crap out of us for the state of the bathroom. And like, it was so bad. Somebody had thrown up also downstairs. Do you remember there was a ping pong table downstairs
Yeah.
in the room,
Yeah.
sort of across from the computer room? Somebody had also thrown up in there, and the cleaning staff wouldn't touch it. So it took a couple weeks before they could like convince people to go clean. Or and guys from like I knew it wasn't me, and I knew it wasn't my roommate. So we just avoided those areas. It was so hard to go in and shower or even use the
So
bathroom because the stench in the second floor bathroom was so horrific. It took a while before they actually cleaned it.
so while that was all going on in floor 2, on floor 3, what I would do is for our bathrooms is or for our big communal bathroom is I would take all of my older issues of like Cosmo and Glamour and cut out the cute little like half-page articles, and I would post them in the stalls and on the mirrors so that when you peed, you could read about different things, like fashion. That was me. So I was like totally plastering all the dolls so that us girls could have, little reading material on different things and,
Somebody did that in our
and
bathrooms too, but you can guess what it was. It was absolutely not
it was
reading
not
material.
it was not cutely cut out little, just
No, we got a lot of like we would collectively get. They didn't have cameras or anything, so nobody who was doing what, and they wouldn't have cameras at the bathroom. But there, I mean, it was 18 and 19-year-old boys. So let's get real. Like it was stupid crap. Um, when it came to registering for classes, like the RA would just like make sure you get your stuff, make sure you come and ask if you have questions, talk to your faculty advisor because you're gonna like you have to get in line when it's your time. And I remember a bunch of us freshmen being very confused about the time thing because we look at the times we've been assigned and we would say, I mean, I remember that first year in that first semester when we were registering for the spring semester, I remember saying, why is this time during, my whatever class? I can't remember what
Or
the class
whatever
was anymore, but I'm
class.
like, it's right in the middle of my class. He's like, it doesn't matter. You either have to go after class or you have to go during class and skip class. Like you can go talk to your professor and see if it's okay if you are late for class or if you skip class and let them know why. Usually they'll let you do it unless there's a test. But I was like, this is just like, there's no attempt here to make this easy. So, and here's the trick. And I think this is the fun part for anybody listening to this conversation who is not Gen X. You had an easier way to do this. You had probably an assigned time. It was somewhat digitally set up. For us, we literally had to stand in line. And if the class, the person before you got the last seat in the class that you were trying to register for, your day just got totally taken up with a whole new plan. You had to
Yep.
figure out if you could take a different class that take the different section of that class at a different time, or you had to run and find the professor and see if you could get what we lovingly refer
Well,
to as a purple sheet, which was an override form, and they would let an extra person in the class. And then you go
well,
back in line.
I think the best part for me was that, again, I was always assigned during a class. So that
Yeah,
meant a lecture from the professor about how their class is the most important thing on planet Earth. And for the record, I remember absolutely nothing I learned in undergrad. Um, I don't. It's all gone. But the best part was like you'd get in line, could be half an hour, could be 10 minutes, could be 3 hours. You didn't know.
no idea.
No
No
idea.
idea. And if you had to leave to pee, you started over unless the
You
people
did.
that were in line around you were kind enough to let you back in line. And sometimes people would, and sometimes people wouldn't.
Yep. And remember those large, did they call them spreadsheets back then? Those printout that had all the classes printed, and
Yep.
then the an employee from the registrar's office, his classes would get full, would come out and just put like the little. They had the black marker, and they'd cross, and then everybody in line would be like, "Oh," and then we
Yep.
had to stand there because we had our catalogs with us,
Absolutely, we did.
our what, 100, 150-page catalog, thumbing through trying to figure out how are we going to get into class. But I think that, one thing that is definitely done right now that we didn't get, students now have a plan of studies, so they kind of have an idea of what they should be taking next. And they understand the order of courses and kind of when when should I take this and that. And we really didn't. It felt like, and thinking back, it was like a free for all every time. I had to go back mentally because nowadays you can pull up your record at any time and pull up your unofficial transcript at any time and look at it. Okay, what have I taken? What, what in this area do I still need to take? Blah, blah, blah. We didn't have. So it was always a crapshoot. But yet we all knew how many hours we needed to be full time so we could get financial aid.
Yes.
So
12.
a lot of credit hours were wasted on you couldn't get the classes that you needed, but you still needed to be a full-time student. And so you took what was available, which I know still happens, but things are having worked in higher ed, like I worked in a program where I was the one who sat down and I actually projected who was taking what when and how many sections we needed. And it's a lot more precise than it was back then.
Well, yeah, we also it wasn't just that we had our course catalog, we also had that big, thick book. What was that thing called that we got that was like the bulletin or whatever? It
Oh,
was like
yes.
it explained what every class was, what the class number
Yes.
was, what it counted for. And because we were in arts and sciences, we had a certain set of what they at the time called core curriculum that we had to
Yep.
take. A certain number of hours in theology, a certain number of hours in philosophy, a certain number of hours in languages, a certain number of hours in whatever. And so part of what you would do is you'd go through that stupid course catalog and be like, okay, these are the things I want to take. If I can't get some of these things, these are some options I can take. And the really hard part about it was most of us, if we lived on campus, it was okay if there were spaces, right? Like you might have an hour or two in between classes. Okay, who cares? Like it was easy to walk to your dorm and then come back to go to class. In fact, it was kind of nice to have a break. I planned some of them that way. But when you live off campus, like I did and you did at some point, right? You wanted to cram as much stuff together as possible so that you didn't spend as because you had to like find a place to park and all that other stuff. You didn't want to leave and come back. So that was
And
hard to do.
and
And
you're
you had to know
staring.
like which other things can I take, which things are options. I waited until the very last semester of my senior year to take a stupid 100 level history course because I
Yep.
could never get into it when I needed it and I was trying to get other things done. Right? It was a constant gamble to figure it out. In those
And
days when you would go register, at least until you were like upperclassmen, they were stressful because you had no idea if you were going to get any of the classes
oh,
you
no.
wanted.
Oh, no. I was still my last semester, and this is why I was a 3-semester senior. My last semester was trying to gather up, um, not prereqs, but part of the curriculum, the core curriculum that,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, "Oh, you're missing this. Oh, you're missing that. Oh,
Yeah.
you wanna graduate from here sometime? Oh." And so that's how that last semester of college before I graduated, and our friend T, I think, was caught in the same thing. She and I would show up to school at 8 a.m. for our 8 a.m. class on Thursday, and we would not leave until about 7 p.m. And we had, because that was when we had our, you might not remember because you might have been in class, but he had a sleeping sofa and I had a sleeping sofa in the library basement. And
I
so
remember you
about,
talking about it. Yeah.
okay, because I think we'd all have lunch together and then you went on to do your thing. And so she and I would like, we both had a sofa. She'd bring her little alarm clock. Everybody else knew that that they were our sofas. And we would stretch out and we would nap for like 2 hours because we had like a 4-hour gap. But what do you do?
You couldn't
So
do anything.
I mean, we hung out with friends and then we took a nap. And then I went outside to have a cigarette and then we went to class. So,
Oh no, I meant when I said you couldn't do anything, I meant you couldn't prevent that kind of thing typically.
no,
Like
oh,
you were
no.
just
Like,
stuck with whatever schedule you could come up with. And you had to be just like sometimes there would be one, especially as you got to be an upperclassman. Like when you were an underclassman, part of the maybe one of the, if you want to call it blessings, was that there were generally many sections of the things everybody had to take, right? 15 or
yeah,
20 sections of English or literature or writing or whatever. Philosophy was required, right? 107 or whatever it was. But like when you got to be an upperclassman, sometimes there was only one,
like one.
maybe two sections if you were lucky of something. And if you couldn't get into it and you needed it for your major, I mean, that was how you
Like,
become a 3 or 4 semester senior because at some point you're like, I can't get in. There's only 5 people allowed in the class. How am I supposed to get into it? There's just not enough room. But
yeah,
you didn't know until you showed up at the registrar's office and they were like, oh, it's closed. Or we don't have the right prerequisite. And you're like, there's no prerequisite listed. And they're like, well, there should
yeah,
be. So now you got to go get an override. And then you go flying across the campus because I don't know, like for me, my professors because I was a theology major undergrad, just for our listeners, so for some context, that building was at the absolute other end of campus from where the registrar's office was. So if I needed to go track down a professor, which I had to do a few times to get an override slip, I'd have to run down there, find them, beg on my knees, get the slip, go back to the registrar's office, and try to get back into the class. It was just, I mean, it was a stressful thing, but we survived it. So, I mean, I think when young people are complaining about this stuff, they really just need to take
Oh,
a beat. We took a
yeah.
beating and we just kept on going.
I mean, they don't know any different though, but I
No, that's
scared
true.
them. I scared them, but and I was gonna say, and I've survived a lot of other things that I would rather not have. But no, it was just, listening to them complain and then seeing, hearing people complain now. And it's like, well, registration's always there's always that element of a gamble.
Yeah.
But, um, as someone who has been through the old school, how it was done for centuries, to phone, to now online, to now so often everything's automatic unless you tell them otherwise because there's a very firm plan of study, it ain't so bad. So, yeah.
I'm just glad I don't have to go back to school anymore. Maybe
Yeah.
when I had to register for classes for my last graduate degree, it was honestly plan of study, fairly easy. I knew what I needed to take, and they were not necessarily capped. They knew how many people were in the program. They knew we all needed to take these classes. So it was really just a matter of we had to take them in a certain order.
Well, okay. And with that, let me say, because my as far as my administrative experience, it has been in it has been at the graduate school level. So I can imagine where, although maybe the technology being used for undergrad to get registered is very different, more advanced than what we had, but I imagine a lot of the gambles are the same. Because
Probably.
once you are in grad school, it is a little bit different,
Yeah.
because you're in a very specific program. So, but at least, hey, now you're not stuck standing in line, wondering how many classes you're going to miss while you're standing in line and wondering what you're actually going to get registered for and if it's going to meet the criteria. Yeah, those are great days.
They were so much fun.
We didn't know any better. Of course, it was fun.
Oh, we did it. That's kind of the fun part about looking back too, is like we hated it in the moment because it was stressful, but we also were it was also kind of exciting because we were getting ready for a new semester. You were looking like most of the classes you picked, you wanted to take. I mean, there were certainly a few you probably didn't want to take, right? That's normal. But generally speaking, like I was initially pre-med, like most people at our school at that time, right? And I knew I was like, oh, I'm going to take general chemistry too next semester, and I'm going to take, you know, whatever other core requirements, whatever they were. So there was still sort of initially as a freshman that newness of being a student, of being in college and not still being in high school. So I think in a lot of ways at first it was a pain, and then you sort of realize, oh, this is kind of cool because I'm in college and we can do this. And then as you get a little bit into your sophomore year and close to your junior year, you're like, this is a massive pain in the butt. There's got to be a better way to figure this out. But this is what
Mm.
you have. So you plan, you get there. And as you get into those upper years, you're at the beginning of the line. So you almost always get what you want when you want it. Not always, but most always. And then you realize as you're walking out the door and you see all the freshmen in line behind you at the very
I'm
back,
glad
you're like, God, I'm sorry, it's you. Like, you all have to go through this. We went through it, but welcome.
it's that rite of passage.
It really was. And like, this is the time everybody's moved into or preparing for school. So, I'm curious. I'm sure they've all had fun registering for classes and starting classes. I kind of miss starting classes.
Well, yeah, because I mean, when you start a class, you usually still have hopes and dreams.
Yes.
That weekly, yeah, goals.
Maybe I should
Yeah.
s maybe the qualification here should be I miss having hopes and dreams, not
Yeah.
that I miss the classes. 20 I mean, let's get real, we're 29 years later now from our freshman year in college. I think that's right, right? 29 years?
Yeah.
29
Yeah.
years since our freshman year of college. Hopes and dreams have mostly been crapped on, flushed. Now we're just happy to make it to tomorrow.
Exactly. So, for our viewers, be sure to leave in the comments. Tell us about some of your registration stories, registering for college, registering for any classes. What were things like, especially in that last century?
That last the end of that last century when we were in school. I'm actually really curious if our listeners, the listeners who went to both four-year institutions and community colleges, if there was a difference in how your registration experiences were. If there were if it maybe there were more specific plans of study, you were gonna do X, Y, and Z that made it slightly easier, or if it was just as much free for all crazy as it was for those of us in four-year schools. So, yeah, definitely let us know what you think and what your experiences were. Always be civil in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe, share with your friends, and definitely check back next week for something new to complain about. T, it's been great. Any last thoughts you have on the registering for classes? Fun?
No, nope. I'm just glad it's over.
Amen
So,
to that.
yeah. So, yes, let us know your thoughts. And in the meantime, everybody be good.
All right, we'll see you next time, T.
All right. Take care, A.